I ran ration line 7 for 11 weeks before I broke it, and in all that time, I never once let the math slip. That was the job. Not kindness. Not cruelty either. Whatever the sale thought when they first saw a human standing over the water crates with a scanner and a clipboard. Just math, done honestly, every single day. Because the corridor only moved 4 tankers a week down the dead riverbed we'd started calling the ash bed, and every liter I gave away twice was a liter some family at the back of the line didn't get once. Kethra's Hollow had been dying for longer than anyone could prove. The Sile had their own word for it, a word that meant something closer to the sky forgot us than drought, and by the time the relief corridor reached them, the riverbed hadn't held water in 4 local years. Their bodies weren't built for that kind of stretch. Something in their skin, some membrane under the gray-blue hide that was supposed to hold moisture the way ours holds heat, just gave out past a certain point. You could see it happening. The skin along their forearms would go dull and start to crack in fine lines, like the mud we were standing on, and once that started there wasn't much time left. So I measured. Every canteen that came through line 7 got a scratch mark filed into the metal at intake. The exact level of that person's ration for the week, no more. Calculated off body mass and the corridor's total water budget divided by every registered soul in the district. My own canteen had a line too. I'd cut it myself the first day, because I wasn't going to ask anything of the Sale standing in that line that I wasn't willing to hold myself to. Fill to the mark. Not a finger's width over. When the canteen ran dry before the mark, that was the ration doing its job. When it ran dry at the mark, you stopped, whatever was still cracking in your throat. I want to be clear that I didn't hate the rule. I built the rule. I believed in it the way you believe in a level line on a wall. Not because it's generous, but because it's the only thing keeping the whole structure from leaning over and crushing someone. The Sale understood that better than most of the relief staff who rotated through line 7. In the early weeks I'd had 2 aid workers pulled off the corridor for pouring extra to whoever cried hardest, and both times, it had cost someone further down the queue their week. Water doesn't care how good your reasons were. It only cares how much is left in the tanker when the last name on the sheet steps up. So I stopped listening to reasons. I listened to the scratch mark on the canteen, and nothing else. And the line moved faster for it, and fewer people died arguing with a scanner that had already decided. The trouble started on a Sale they called Vessa, an older woman, spine bowed the way the elders' spines went after enough dry seasons, walking the last stretch of the queue with a granddaughter's hand wrapped around 2 of her fingers. I clocked them at the tail end of the line, past the chalk mark on the ground that meant cutoff. Corridor rules were simple. Cutoff meant cutoff. The tanker crew needed the trucks moving before the heat peaked, and the district behind us was already 3 days overdue for its own delivery. I checked my board. Vessa and the girl weren't on the manifest for today's draw. Some mix-up with the district rolls, a transfer that hadn't cleared, the kind of clerical failure that happens 40 times a week when you're running relief through a bureaucracy stitched together after the fact. Not my mistake to fix. Not my water to give. I had exactly enough in the tanker for the names on my sheet, and if I poured for 2 names that weren't on it, 2 names that were would go without, somewhere down the corridor, in a district I'd never see. The girl's arms had already started to crack. I watched Vessa not ask. That was the thing that got me. She didn't plead, didn't put the child forward the way I'd seen other adults do, holding a kid up like evidence. She just stood there at the chalk line, with her granddaughter's hand in hers, spine bowed, waiting to be told no, in whatever language I chose to tell her, already composing the walk back to wherever the district's queue for tomorrow began. She'd done this math herself, probably. She knew the corridor's numbers as well as I did. She wasn't hoping. She was just standing where the rule put her, the way I'd have wanted anyone to. I looked at my own canteen. Full to the line I'd scratched that first day, untouched since the last fill, because I'd been rationing myself down to nothing all week, the way I made everyone else do, saving the mark for the end of the patrol like it was something I'd earned by waiting. I want to say I thought it through. I didn't. I unhooked the canteen, walked past the chalk line, and knelt down in front of the girl. She looked at her grandmother first, the way kids do when an adult does something outside the shape of the day. Vessa didn't move to stop me. I don't think she trusted it yet. I told the girl to cup her hands, in the flat trade pigeon we used at the checkpoint, and she did. Small gray-blue palms already fissured pale along the creases. I unscrewed the cap and poured, not fast, not a performance, just steady, the same care I gave every measured pour on that line, until the canteen ran past my own scratch mark and kept going, past it, down toward empty, into her hands instead of my mouth. She drank from her own cupped palms like it was the first water she'd ever really tasted, some of it running down her wrists, and I watched the fine white cracks along her forearms darken and soften where the water touched. Nobody behind us said anything, a checkpoint line policing itself, mostly, out of exhaustion if nothing else. I capped the empty canteen and hung it back on my belt, past its own last line now, and told Vesa, in the same flat pigeon, that the manifest error would be fixed by the time the next tanker came through, that I'd walk it up myself if I had to. She didn't thank me the way I expected. She reached into the wrap at her shoulder and pressed something small and dry into my palm instead. A curl of pale root, hard as bone, the kind the Sael chewed on the worst days when there was nothing left to drink at all, to keep some moisture working through the body a little longer. She told me, in her own language this time, not the pigeon, that I should keep it. I didn't understand the words, I understood the gesture. The rest of that patrol I went without. 12 hours in Kethra's heat, with an empty canteen clipped to my belt and a lump of bitter root in my cheek that did next to nothing against a thirst that got up into my skull by the 6th hour and stayed there. My hands shook loading the last crates onto the tanker. My lips split along one corner, the same fine cracking I'd watched heal on that girl's forearms, and there was something almost funny in that, if I'd had the spit left to laugh. I didn't fix the math. I want to say that plainly, because this isn't a story about a rule that turned out to be wrong. The corridor still ran short somewhere down the line that week. Some family I never met went a little thinner on their ration, because a Sael grandmother and her granddaughter got a full one instead of none. I've turned that over more nights than I'll admit. The rule was right. It usually still is. I filed the manifest correction that evening anyway, sitting in the relief tent, with a headache like a fist behind my eyes, making sure Vesa's district got its clerical error fixed before the next tanker came through, so no other quartermaster would have to stand at that chalk line and make the same call I'd made. It felt like the smallest kind of penance. I don't know if it counted for anything against the family down the corridor who never knew my name and never got their extra liter back. Probably it didn't. The ledger doesn't balance that way. I've stopped expecting it to. But I kept the canteen. I never scratched a new line into it. Never filed the old mark out and reset it for the next patrol the way I was supposed to. It sits on my shelf now, corridor closed. Water running again in the ash bed on its own schedule. The Sael numbers holding steady for the first time in longer than anyone could remember. The scratch mark is still there if you know where to look, catching the light at an angle. One thin line, and past it, nothing, all the way down to empty. That's the only ration I ever gave twice. I don't regret the arithmetic of it. I just don't regret the once either.